Summer Penguin waddled through the park, her little flippers swinging gently. The sun was warm on her back and the green grass seemed to stretch out forever in every direction. She saw the beautiful birds with brilliant feathers fluttering from tree to tree, and her eyes sparkled with curiosity as she watched them. A pair of vibrant, colorful flowers caught her attention. Leaning in, she took a deep sniff, her nose twitching, and a small, happy smile appeared on her face as she enjoyed the sweet scent. Continuing her stroll, Summer spotted a large, shimmering pond. She made her way to the water's edge, her reflection looking back at her from the calm surface. Below her, she could see tiny fish darting and swimming. Summer lit her beak in anticipation, her gaze fixed on the moving shadows in the water. She waited patiently, still as a statue, before quickly dipping her head and snatching a fish in her beak. Suddenly, a large dark shadow fell over her. Summer looked up and saw a magnificent black swan standing over her, its long neck craned down. The swan's brow was furrowed, and he stared intently at the fish. Summer carefully placed the fish between her flippers. With a friendly grin, she held the fish out to the swan. The swan's long neck shot forward, snatching the fish from her grasp. He gulped the fish down in a single swift motion. Immediately, the swan puffed out his chest, flapped his wings menacingly, and hissed at Summer. Her smile instantly disappeared, replaced by a frown of confusion and hurt. Summer took a small, slow step back, then another and another, until she was a safe distance away from the now aggressive black swan. Summer ducked behind a wide trunk of a sturdy oak tree, her heart thumping a little faster than usual. She cautiously peeked out around the edge, just in time to see the black swan give a final smug smirk before gliding away across the pond. His dark form eventually disappeared around a bend, leaving the surface of the water tranquil once more. Summer let out a small sigh of relief and stepped off from her hiding spot. She rubbed her head with her flipper, a perplexed look on her face. What was that all about? Shaking her head, she shrugged and decided it wasn't worth thinking about anymore. Her attention was soon diverted by the rustling of leaves in a nearby tree. She looked up and spotted two squirrels, their bushy tails twitching with excitement. The male squirrel scampered down to a branch, carefully holding a large nut in his mouth. He presented it to the female, who took it delicately from his paws. The female's eyes widened, and she let out a soft chirp, then nuzzled her head against the male's. Summer smiled, her own heart feeling warm as she witnessed the tender moment. Continuing her walk, Summer noticed more and more pairs of animals in the park. Two cats sat grooming each other under a bush, their tails intertwined. The male would occasionally rub his head affectionately against the female's cheek, and she would purr in response. A pair of pigeons cooed softly as they strutted together, and even a couple of fluffy bunnies nibbled on grass side by side. Summer felt a wave of happiness wash over her, a feeling of contentment in seeing all these creatures getting along so well. As she approached the pond again, her gaze fell upon a new pair. Two pristine white mute swans were swimming gracefully together. Their long, elegant necks curved towards each other, their bodies mirroring each other's movements. The male and female were a picture of harmony, a stark contrast to the black swan she had encountered earlier. Summer's smile returned, even wider than before, as she watched the two swans glide across the water in perfect unison, their bond a testament to the peaceful nature of the park. Summer felt a little flutter of a happy wing, seeing the two white swans so contentedly together. She toddled over to a nearby garbage can, not out of any desire for garbage, but because she had spied a large, unopened bag nestled beside it. It was a bag of birdseed, lightly dropped by a careless picnicker. Summer, being an expert using her flippers for things other than swimming, carefully pushed and maneuvered the heavy bag over to the pond's edge. With a series of small, determined huffs, she nudged the bag open. Summer, a penguin whose tastes ran more toward aquatic cuisine, wrinkled her nose at the contents, but knew the swans would enjoy it. She let out a soft musical whistle, the sound carrying across the still water. The two white swans, who were now gliding gracefully toward the center of the pond, paused and turned their heads. Upon seeing Summer in the bag of food, they changed course and swam over. Summer scattered the food onto the water's surface, watching as the male swan gently motioned with his head for the female to eat first. The female took a few delicate pecks, and only then did the male begin to feed. Summer's heart swelled with happiness. It was so nice to see animals getting along so well. As Summer watched the happy scene, a long, dark net snaked out from behind a large rock on the far side of the pond. It was the black swan, his crimson eyes fixed intently on the peaceful couple. His head bobbed almost imperceptibly, a slow predatory movement. A strange, possessive glimmer appeared in his eyes as he observed the female and white swan. An unmistakable resolve set on the black swan's gaze. He wanted her, and he intended to have her. Summer watched from a safe distance as the black swan glided towards the two white swans. A wave of unease washed over her, and she remembered the black swan's aggression from earlier. Frowning, she waddled a few steps back from the edge of the pond, finding a small patch of shade beneath a willow tree. As the black swan approached, the female white swan looked at her with an expression of curious fascination, almost a smile. The male, however, bristled, his neck stiffening and his brow furrowing in a displeased scowl. He didn't immediately attack, holding his ground as the black swan hadn't yet crossed any line. The black swan began his courtship display. He arched his neck, preened his glossy black feathers, and dipped his head gracefully in and out of the water. He puffed up his wings, showing off his impressive size and strength. The female white swan watched, her interest growing with each calculated movement. The male white swan's patience wore thin. With a determined push, he swam directly toward the black swan, putting his face just inches from the intruders. But before he could make a move, the black swan hissed menacingly, and the male white swan immediately recoiled, swimming backward just as fast as he had approached. He appeared intimidated, his head now bowed slightly. The black swan, having correctly judged his rival's non-confrontational nature, was not surprised. He turned his attention back to the female, his confidence bolstered by the male's retreat. Summer's flippers went to her hips, her small form rigid with annoyance. She had a kind heart, but she had seen enough of the black swan to know his true intentions. This was not a friendly gesture. It was a calculated move to break up the happy couple. The black swan dipped his head under water, his long neck disappearing beneath the surface. He resurfaced a moment later with a large silvery fish, which he presented with a flourish. The female white swan's eyes widened, and a look of genuine impressiveness crossed her face. Her smile widened, captivated by the black swan's skillful hunting. Seeing the female's reaction, the black swan dipped his head under the water again, this time retrieving an even larger fish. The female's interest was now fully piqued, and she began to swim closer to him, ignoring the worried look from her mate. Desperate to hold his mate's attention, the male white swan plunged his own head into the water. He held it under for a few moments, resurfacing slowly, his beak empty. The female watched with a frown of disappointment. He tried again, a little more frantic this time, but came up empty-beaked once more. Taking full advantage of his rival's failure, the black swan dipped his neck into the water and immediately produced another fish. The male white swan's eyes widened in shock, his head retracted slightly as if punched. The black swan had proven his superiority, leaving the male to hang his head in defeat. Summer's small face was set. The female white swan made up her mind. With a final glance at her now dispirited mate, she turned and began swimming away with the black swan. Their dark and light forms glided side by side across the pond. The black swan shot one last smug smile, his brows furrowed in a self-satisfied expression, back at the defeated male before disappearing with his new companion around a bend. Summer's small face was set in a firm, determined expression. The black swan's parting smirk at the male was the final straw. She had to do something. Her gaze fell upon the pond, a plan forming in her mind. Her face brightened with a sudden flash of inspiration. She ran to the water's edge and, without hesitation, dove in. She emerged a moment later, a small but respectable fish held proudly in her beak. She paddled quickly toward the crestfallen male swan, who was now floating sadly alone. When she reached him, she gently offered the fish. The male's sad expression transformed into one of pure joy. He took the fish and, with a grateful nod, reached out his own wing. Summer happily shook it, a gesture of solidarity between the two. Re-energized by Summer's kindness, the male swan swam after his mate. Summer watched hopefully from the shore, her little heart filled with anticipation. He caught up to the pair and moved in front of them, blocking their path. The black swan, annoyed by the interruption, shot him a look of intense displeasure. The male proudly held up the fish, a grand gesture of his renewed commitment. But the fish, while a decent catch for a penguin, was dwarfed by the black swan's earlier, more substantial offerings. The female white swan glanced at the small offering, then turned her back on her mate, sending a small splash of water on his way with a flick of her foot. The black swan smiled triumphantly and swam off with the female, leaving the male alone once more. The male white swan swam slowly back toward Summer, his neck lowered in a posture of complete and utter defeat. He looked at the fish in his beak, a symbol of his failed attempt, and then at Summer, his eyes filled with sadness. Summer, her own heart heavy, gently patted his head with her flipper. The swan simply pushed the fish back into her flippers and turned away, swimming listlessly toward the middle of the pond. Summer stood alone, holding the fish. The delicious scent of her favorite food filled her nostrils, but she felt no hunger. With a frown of deep sadness, she nudged the fish back into the water with her foot. The fish, suddenly free, swam away with a flick of his tail, a silent sigh of relief leaving his mouth. Meanwhile, the male swan reached the small island in the center of the pond. He pulled himself up onto the watery, grassy bank, his head still low. Looking into its reflection in the still water, he saw the image of a heartbroken creature. Tears welled up in his eyes, silently tracing paths down his beak. Closing his eyes, he buried his head in his feathers, his body trembling with silent sobs. The peaceful part seemed to hold its breath, grieving with the lonely swan.